Hello, I'm Liao. In the previous video, we talked about resolvers. We learned about what is resolver, what does it do, and how does it work. And in this video, we're going to end the following ones. We're going to be more practical. Basically, we're going to explore how we can configure the resolver function of your module bundlers. Right, we're going to start with webpack because, in my opinion, webpack has the most comprehensive number of options that you can configure. It does not mean that more is better, but it just has a lot of ways for you to customize. So we're gonna go through with that. We start with webpack first, and I want to basically teach you how to fish rather than to give you a fish. So translate it back. I want to teach you how to configure webpack resolver, but I don't want to show you like this is how you do things. I want to, in the process, try to show you how to learn what are the options that you can configure. Right? We learned the kind of theory part in the previous video. If you watch that, the link's in the description and gonna be here. Right? This will teach you about the concept of a resolver. Basically, give a high-level idea of what the resolver is like. And in this video, we're gonna go through with you with the webpack docs, and instead of just telling you that this is what it does, and we're gonna explore with me. Basically, we're gonna experiment play around with the options that we have in the webpack documentation, and basically share you my secrets on how basically when I look at the options, I kind of know what happens and how I actually experiment with it to learn about how it actually works. And so that in future, when webpack has more options, or not just webpack, other bundlers have more options, you basically have a way or a sense on how does that work, right? And apply a technique that we're going to use right now to map it back or to experiment with it so that it matches of what you think it is. And so that hopefully this will extend your knowledge further infinitely, so that when there's new options, you don't have to find a new video from my channel to learn about, what does this option means, how do I configure them, right? So hopefully I can teach you that technique about to learn basically any resolver options so that you can learn yourself in the future, right? Hopefully I can do this by the end of this video, right? So this video we're going to learn about, learning about configuring for webpack resolver options. I think I'm going to split it into two parts. And part one, which is this video, I'm going to talk about basically the basic options that you can configure. Right, part two, we will look at, so for webpack, you can give a plugin, a resolver plugin for webpack. So part two, we're gonna dig a bit deeper, try to figure out how we can write a resolver plugin. Right, we can try and use a resolver plugin, and we're gonna explore how we can write a resolver plugin. So that is a whole video that's very complicated itself. So I'm gonna make it as part two. Okay, so let's take a look at the webpack docs that we have over here. How do you come over here? Well, you can go to webpack website, documentation, and then you go for configurations. On the left, you see resolve. You click on it, you jump to a resolve chapter. Hopefully, all webpack documentation in future more or less will follow this structure, so you can find yourself around this. Hopefully you are good enough. So we are in the resolve functions, and everything about resolver is in this resolve. Right. So before we start, we're gonna configure a sample application project, and I'm not gonna paste a link of that in, I'm not gonna push it to GitHub or whatever. I believe you can set it up, and I'm gonna show you how I set it up right now. Let me quickly show you how I set this up. I install webpack and webpack CLI. And then I create a webpack config.js. This will be where we'll configure our resolver. Most important to take note over here is I set the mode to development and dev2 to false so that we can easily look at the output later on. To make it easier to run later on, I'm adding a script called build to run webpack build. So here I'm going to create a few files for me to build later on. A source file that imports from A and console out with the value of A, and a file called A. This exports A, which is 1, 2, 3. So here I'm going to build the file, and here's my output. Since I set the mode to be development and the dev tool to be false, now you can see which files are being bundled in and the file path itself. So we are done with it. Let's go back to our webpack config and let's figure out the first options that we can have. Alias, right? So this creates an alias for you to import. Right, from here, if you read the documentation, it says that you can have aliases, meaning if instead of a relative path like this, you can use it like this. Right? So utilities, if you search utilities, is from here, right? So this is the alias. Whatever it starts with utilities, it will resolve from this folder from onwards. Right, so reading like this, you're like, okay, roughly get what it means, but we have to make sure we actually understand it better. We should try it out. Right, this is my way of actually learn something. Right, we have to try it out, experiment with it, so that we actually fully understand how it works. Right, so here how about let's configure a resolve alias. Right, so let's come here and create resolve alias. Okay, resolve alias. And let's create an alias. So here we have, just follow from the example first, right? Utilities. And we need a path to the here, right? So we need to import path. Okay. So it says that we can now import utilities like this. From this folder, right? So let's create this, right? Let's try and import it. Import utilities from utility, and maybe let's console out that as well. Okay. So where this file is, right? This file, it says that it's in this. Their name is the current folder of this file, which is the webpack config, and we resolve. From this folder, we get is relative from the current folder to source utilities. Right? So source utilities. So source utilities, folder utilities. And so this is to be replaced as, so this whole path gonna replace here, right? Utilities. So we can go one step in, which is utility.js. And here I'm going to export something. So I import default, so I'm going to export default. Utility. Hey. Okay, let's see. Let's save this and let's try and build. Yarn build. Okay, and let's take it out. Look at our output. So now you see that we import another file called utility. So this is what we write. This is what we write, utilities, utility, and then resolve to source utilities, utility.js. Okay, so basically it says this matches our understanding of the alias, meaning whatever you write utilities will be replaced by the path which is configured here, right? This source utilities. So let's try and experiment a few things. Let's create another file called b.js, export this is like a b. So if we have B, then we can theoretically import B from utilities B, right? So anything from the utilities folder, we can have it and we can import it, right? So let's console out as well. And let's try to build it. Let's look at the output. Let's see. We now import utilities B, and it's resolved to this source utilities b.js, right, which matches our understanding. So do we always have to use path resolve like this and ended with like a slash? It wasn't said out in the documentation, so why not try it out, right? So let's try it out. So let's see. If I remove this, can I still build? It works, right? So probably we don't even need utility. We don't even need to have a a backslash at the end of the path that we have over here. Right? Do we need this? Let's try. I don't know. Let's try and build. Okay, we can't really find this folder now. We can't find source utilities because so utilities in alias you have to provide a full path. Right? So the key of like what question to ask is basically just be curious, right? Do just be curious about what you can do. So if I don't have this, say like this, so let me show you like what I mean by curious, right? We can be curious about, okay, how about if I import like this without something, utilities, what does it resolve to? Right? My gut feeling is it will resolve to a file called index in the utilities folder, but let's just try and build first. And it does not work, right? You couldn't find the file. So one thing we can try out is to add a index.js and export default index utilities index.js. Let's try build. Okay, it works, and now you see that let's collapse this. We see that we are importing utilities and it resolved to source utilities index.js. Right, so it matches our understanding, right? And what if, just curious, if I add, like, does the alias have to be like a folder thing? Can I have like utilities A, something like this? And maybe since it's not a folder, right? So can I have something like a utilities A / index.js, right? So export default. Let me try to say ha ha ha. Okay. So the premise of this is that is it just like matching a string like a prefix? So does it mean that if I have something like this, it will just replace with the full path, and if I add anything behind, it just doesn't matter, right? Because we just add A at the end. So here we add A at the end of utilities. Does it work like this? I don't know, right? So be curious and let's just try it out. So let me try and build. And it works, okay? This is surprising. And let's take a look at what we get if we write, hold on. I think, did we save it correctly? B is utilities A, right? I'll try and build again. Okay, it does not work. I think I forgot to save the file, so it does not work this way, right? Can't find utilities A. So you have to have a slash, or without a slash, you'll be resolving to the utilities folder and as a directory and try to look for index.js and stuff like that, right? So you cannot have like utilities A and expect like this, like the front part of the string be replaced by the alias path and continue to look for and append like A at the end. Like so I thought probably we could have like something like this replaced in here and this will work, but it does not work like that. Right, now you learn something, right? So if I just make a video about like this, telling you that what can work, what cannot work, it'd be pretty boring. But if I say, if you figure out yourself, it's interesting, right? Because just be curious and try and explore things, right? So we learned about aliases. Let's try to take a look at the next options, right? Alias field. Okay, this is this has a specific specification, right? So let's take a look at what that specification is. Okay, so here it says that in the, okay, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically if you have you have a package JSON, if you're trying to import in node modules, and the package JSON can usually, when we in a package in a node module, say for example try to import something, let's try open one folder, you will notice that there will be a, let's try and see whether they have it. Okay, usually they have a main file or not, then the index.js will be in here. Sometimes you have, let's see, main. You have a main field that says what is the main entry point for this package, right? If you read at the node modules resolution algorithm, you probably will see that it will, after it resolve a node modules folder, it will try to look for the main field and try to resolve it. But this field can be configurable by webpack, right? And it's configured through this alias field, right? So let's try and create a node modules. Right, you don't have to publish node modules to create node modules, right? Here, let me try to just create a node modules called underscore with a package.json. All right, and the name called underscore. So we're gonna import underscore, and I'm gonna have a main field called index.js. Okay, put in a source folder index.js, browser field called source browser.js, and maybe SSR field called source.ssr.js, and lastly we're gonna have foo, source foo.js. Okay, I think name cannot start with underscore, so let me just try with maybe a, so that it's at the very top, right? You're gonna name it A right here. Okay, so now we're gonna, of course, create these field files, right? So quickly create index.js, export default. Haha. I think it does not. We don't have to care about the contents because later on we're going to look at actual path that can be resolved to, right? So we have browser, we have foo, we have SSR. Okay, just random names. Okay, and now we're gonna come over here, webpack config. Okay, no wait. We're gonna index. We're gonna import this module called A, right? I'm gonna import A from A, console log A. Right, so let's try and build first to see what we get by default. Yeah, build. Okay, and let's take a look at our output. When we try to import A, we get node module source browser. Okay, so browser. Why? Well, because the default value, so here it is the default value. It is how Webpack writes this doc. This is actually the default value, right? They expect a string array, and the default value for this alias fields is called browser. So it will actually find browser first to resolve. So here we specify browser to source browser, so it will look at it first, right? If you don't have this, then it will fall back to main, right? Main is always the default behavior for your node module resolution algorithm. Okay, so can we change that, right? So now it's browser, right? If we have browser, can we change that? Yes, we can. And this is exactly the field that does that, right? So let's come over here and say aliasFields. Let's say maybe foo and SSR. Right, and let's try and build. So this is an array. You can specify as many fields as you can. So like most things that you see over here in Webpack configuration, when it says you can text in an array, it's like a priority list, right? In Webpack resolve options, it's like priority list. Right? We'll try the first one. If it exists, and if not, it will try a second one. If it does not exist, it will try a third one, and so on and so forth. Right? So meaning you will look at whether you have a full field first, right? So of course we have, right? So let's take a look at our did we configure correctly? Let's see, build. Oh, we're still importing source browser. Do I understand that wrongly? It's aliasFields, right? Specify field to be passed according to this specification. After reading through the specs again, I realized that I'm very sorry. I totally misunderstood what the configuration is for. Right? This happens, right? That's why we want to embrace in an experimental spirit to just try it out, and so that you reinforce what you know, and make sure that what you think it is matches what it actually behaves, right? And this is a very good, precious moment for you to learn about, for myself as well, to realize that, okay, my mental model does not really matches what it means, so I have to try it out and figure it out, right? And the things that I actually kind of explain where you follow a field is actually something that we probably will reach later on, which is the main fields, right? So main fields specify what is the main fields for the file. But alias fields is something that personally I never used before, but after reading through I realized it's interesting, it's useful, which is for you to basically specify an alias for certain files within just that package itself. Specify an alias, right? So for example, here so it has to be, I'm not sure what's the triggering of when you use an alias fields. Probably we have an options for that, but to trigger that, but to have that kind of alias works like this, right? So if you come over here, probably it's for browsers, okay? I'm not sure, I'm just guessing. So this is something we can try later on. So the alias for browsers, right? So how it works is that, say for example, you have this package called A. Now we have a file called danger.js. So, okay, let me export default danger. And I have a file called safe.js. Export safe. Okay, so normally you just import danger and use because this is in different environments, like in server side and in browser side, or in production or development, you have different preferences on importing a file, right? So in most cases, danger is the file that you want to import, but in certain scenarios you want to alias it to the safe file, right? So all your code is written as importing from danger, right? Even the browser is importing from danger. So all the files are importing from danger, but in certain scenarios you want to specify an alias. In this case, we want to specify an alias fields, right? So I believe if you have this, it will read this field to specify to specify an alias, right? So in normal case, when you're trying to build right now, normal scenario, when you import danger, you see that it imports a danger file. But now in certain other scenarios, you want to replace basically all the danger to save file. What you do is, of course, first is that you have this package.json to specify this alias, right? So let me just reuse full. Okay, maybe I use bar right now to say danger, and danger is within source.danger.js, right? So source danger.js going to replace with source safe.js. Okay, even if I had this, if you try and build, it's still pointless. Danger is still pointing to danger. But now we're going to go to webpack and specify bar as a field for the alias fields, and then try to build now. And find that now when you import danger, import safe, right? So alias fields is to look in the package.json to find that field to have your mapping, alias mapping of what file should import. Instead of importing that file, you should alias importing the other file, right? So it is quite powerful, but I never used it before. But a few use case would be maybe like browser side and server side differences, right? So in browser side, you always use the danger file, and in server side, you always use the safe file, or the other way around. Or maybe production, you always use this, and development, you use the other file, right? So alias field, today I learned, right? So let's come back over here, and wow, we have a lot of options to cover. Hopefully we can get faster right now. Condition names, right? So let's try what is a condition names. This again is exportFields, right? So I'm not gonna go too detail about exportField, and I believe there's a lot of options that is related to exportField. If I search exportField, no, okay, exportFields, right? There's a few exports related. and they actually relates to the package exports specification that I think making a standalone video about what is package exports should do its justice about what this covers, right? But just to try this out, we have condition names, right? So basically, let me quickly do an example. Say here, if you have exports, it says that if you're trying to they specify what you can import. So dot, which is the package itself, we're trying to import A, and depends on different condition, you can import different files, right? So if you are in using imports like ES6 kind of imports, then maybe the file you're getting is the source index.js, right? If you're using a node environment, right? So it's not a browser environment, node environment, you get maybe source full.js, right? So just random names, right? If you are at, now I'm trying to get a new name like bar, then probably you get danger.js, okay? Just lazy to create files, I'm just gonna create like same files over here. Okay, so now when I try to build, whoa, what happened? Okay, terminal, try and build, yarn build. What I get when I try to import A, I get source index.js, okay. And if I come over here and say exports, condition names, and I'm gonna call my condition names to be a bar, right? Because we have specified bar as the condition. And if I try to build, then let's take a look at the output. Realize that we are trying to, when you import A, we get the save file instead, because we're trying to import danger, and then because this kicks in as well, alias field, we alias to the save file, right? If we comment this out and we try and build again, then we're getting a danger file, right? So this is the condition names, and it can, same thing as I explained just now, when it's in string, you can have anything, right? You can bar and full, and it will apply in priority one by one. If it matches, then you will use the first one, right? First one that matches will be applied. So condition names, right? Description files. By this package JSON as an example, as a default value, you know that it reads what's the file that it reads, right? Package JSON, right? So if you come over here to our A package, and we try to create another file called haha.json, and this time around the main field, we're gonna change it to full. Maybe we can create a file called haha, right? And okay, the entry file will be haha.js. Remove everything, and of course, you would expect building normally it's going to the danger, just now what we had, right? But if you come over here, webpack config, and we change the description file, let's just copy this, description files to haha.json. Now, of course, build, you would expect to import from haha.js, right? You use the haha.json instead of the package.json. Of course, if you don't have the haha.json, let's see, let's remove this. Let's just change to other name, and you run into an error because without haha.json, because the array only takes in haha.json, right? Without this haha.json, we're gonna find a index.js within the A modules, right? Of course, you can have a fallback, right? So if the first one does not apply the second one, right? So we have haha and package.json. Now haha.json is not there, we can't import, but package.json is here, so we can import from danger. But as soon as we add back haha and try to build again, then you get to haha.js, right? So we covered a few. Of course, I start to doubt myself. Are we going to cover everything? Probably not. I hope that this video will probably try a few more, and hopefully this video inspires you to basically follow my way, trying out each of the options and figure out like what they are meant for and how it works. So if you are not so sure about a specific options, you can join my Discord server. I have the link in the description. This is a plug so that you can join the Discord server and come in, ask your questions. And I'm trying to build a community over here, so each of you can help each other out, and I'll try to. And you see, I also learned today. I learned about aliasFields, so we can learn from each other as well, and hopefully we can grow with together. Right. So let me cover a few more. EnforceExtension. The name suggests probably understandable. If you right now you import from let's see, you import from a file, right, without extension, right? We can import like this without extension. You build, it works, right? It works, right? And if we enforce extension like this over here, enforce extension, default is false, enforce extension to be true. Now you get an error because you couldn't wait. Can you wait? How does that work? Only this will work, right? Enforce extension. I think I didn't save it well. Let's save. Enforce extension. Save. Let's try and build again. It works. Okay, now back to the problem again. Why does it work? Index imports A. If true, will not allow extensionless files. So by default will works if foo has a JS extension. But this, with this enabled, only this will work. Right. That is what I understand, right? But it does not work this way. If it's true, it is true right now. Right, let's remove everything we have. It is true. Still works. This will, but if this enabled, only this will work. Is it like this? Okay, I don't think it's related. Wait, hold on. Extensionless files. Okay, let's remove this. And let's try to comment this out again. Okay, this works. Oh, okay. Now I learned something as well, right? So if your file does not have extension, and try to import it like this, it'll work. Resolve to this file. But if you try to enforce extension, now you can't import a file that does not have extensions, right? It will enforce extension. You have to have an extension. And what extension you can have? You see the error, it says it does not find, it couldn't find AJS, AJSON, AWASM. That is because this is next field, next option, extensions. This is the list of extension you're looking for. And enforce extension, meaning you have to have one of these extension as a file. It cannot be an extensionless file. Okay, so here, if I have JS, okay, let's try and build. I get this. Okay, now let's try to have extensions. Right, so most of the times you use this extension list is when you want to import TS without having to specify TS, right? So you have TS and JS, and you prefer TS first, right? Again, this array, just like any other array, the first one that matches will be applied. Right? So if you have a.js, a.ts, and then if you try to import, you will get a.ts instead of a.js. Right? If you don't have this file, and try to build, it still works. It will get a.js. So this is the this is the array, right? If you swap this order around, JS first, then TS, and let's restore the TS file and JS file both exist, and try to build, and then you get a.js because you prioritize or prefer a.js, the JS extension first before the TS extension. Right, we basically cover quite a lot. Okay, so fallback. I think fallback is something that you rarely use, right? So fallback is when you try to redirect module requests when normal resolving fails, right? So if you couldn't find a certain modules, what do you fall back to? If you try to resolve ABC and you couldn't find ABC, what do you fall back to, right? So say for example, we are trying to import a module called BBB, right? I believe we don't have BBB, right? And try to build, okay, does not exist, right? Build failed. So we can have a fallback for BBB in our webpack config. So you could have it, you could not have it, right? And if you don't have it, what's your fallback? So if someone installed BBB and it's probably BBB is your pure dependency or something of that package, and someone install it, then you have it, then it's good. But if you don't have it, you can have a fallback. So BBB equals to let's create a fallback fallback.js export default fallback, and let's specify this fallback to source fallback.js. I'm trying to build this again. Source fallback. Okay, I think we need hold on. I think we need a full path over here. Let's say path.join their name. Hold on, source fallback.js. Okay, we don't need this somehow. Okay, and now it works. And you can see if we try to import BBB fallback, if you don't have BBB, you go to the fallback. And let's just try to create a BBB, right? You're gonna clone this BBB and try to build again. And now you see that BBB will be, okay, wait, hold on. I think package.json, this is BBB. Let's see, does it have fallback? How come it's always go to fallback instead? Redirect module when normal resolving fails. Okay, but our normal resolving works, right? Let's see. Source. Everything works. BBB, you should be able to resolve BBB. Oh, okay. Hold on. Let's try and remove this fallback first. BBB source extension and force extensions. Okay, so I think let's comment these two out. Okay, so I believe exportExtension has more than just make sure you can't import an extension. It will always append the extensions at the end of your file, right? So if you try to have enforce extensions like this, then when you specify something like .js, then it will always append .js to look for the file itself. And you couldn't find the file, then you have error, right? Okay, so this is something I learned about enforce extensions as well. So now without enforce extension, we can find BBB, and if you look at this when trying to import BBB, you get to node modules BBB, and you have fallback. Even with fallback, you still resolve to node BBB, right? Because you can find the file. And if you couldn't find a file, if you couldn't resolve BBB, right? Say this is something like this, then your BBB will be a resolved to your fallback. So fallback, specify a fallback if you couldn't find the modules BBB. Okay, so we are almost halfway through. mainFields Just now we learned about mainFields. What is the entry point? mainFiles is a file index file, right? So you're trying to resolve directory, right? Remember our node module resolution algorithm. You're trying to resolve directory. Look for the index file first. Of course, with the enforce extensions and the extension field, you try to apply extensions to the index, right? Of course, you can change that. You can change to other files instead of index. All right, and exports fields. Just now we look at exports for package exports. You can replace that exports to some other things, to some other names. So you can specify that exports fields, modules, resolve from node modules folder, right? What if you don't want node modules folder, you want some other folder called foo, and then aaa.package.json. Oh, hold on. Instead of this, you have foo, and you have a file called, okay, let me just copy aaa over here instead. A and B, right? And here, let's just save this. Let's try and build. Now you see that I am, okay, hold on, BBB. Okay, no, we still couldn't find because we haven't specified modules, right? So modules equals to foo. I try to build. Now look at the main.js. You see that we are importing from foo b source when we are going for b, right? Using the foo. And yeah, so basically you can configure that. Again, you see that it's an array, meaning you can specify multiple folders and you apply the first one first, right? And yeah, there's so many options, so I'm not cover them anymore. And hopefully this video is interesting enough that hopefully I show you my technique on how I learn about each options. Basically go and try to read through the documentation first to have an idea of how it works, and then try it out, right? You've seen how I set up a project. It's damn easy, right? We just install the webpack and webpack CLI, and then I just immediately can try it out, right? And you don't even have to create your own node modules, publish it, and to try it out. Just write into node modules folder directly, create a fake modules and try it out, right? So it's so easy to try it out. So you have the impression of how you should work, and then you try it out and verify that it matches how you think it is, and that's how it reinforces you to know that, okay, this is how it works. If it does not work on how you think it is, then read further, explore, and you figure it out, right? And one thing I said, be curious, basically play around with the options, that push the options to a limit, like to basically to understand the boundary of how this option works, right? As we shown in the alias field, basically we try to see whether alias is just about prefix or actually it have to be a folder name, right? You have to have a you cannot have a folder name that's slightly different and matches, right? And lastly, of course, we have a Discord channel, a Discord server that you can join and chat with me and other people within the community. So if you're not sure, and if you try it out and you couldn't figure out actually what it actually means, then feel free to drop in and ask questions, right? So links to the Discord channel, this Discord server will be in the description, and I'll see you there, right? So that's all for this video about configuring Webpack Resolver, part 1. And the next part will be how we can write Webpack Resolver plugins, right? Part 2. And after Webpack, we will explore other module bundlers as well. So that's all for this video. And hope if you like this video, give me a huge thumbs up. If you have any questions, feel free to comment in the comment section below. And I'll see you in the next video. So see ya. Bye bye.